Oh, it's Sophia. I love Sophia. Today.
Anybody know how to flip a video on Zoom? Yeah, like, so if somebody's watching it right now, the words are backwards, so you have to like set the camera so it's
Oh yeah,
Flip.
you're saying that.
flipped. How'd you flip it? Let me see. Choose. Let's do some video settings. Oh, here we go. Got it. Hey, let's go. All right, now we're in business. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it on the screen.
Okay, guys, good morning. Welcome. Welcome back to our Saturday workshop. And I just want to say thank you for coming. I myself was tempted not to come with the beautiful weather, but we're here. And I want to say a big thank you. You'll see the people wearing Mindset shirts, they're our guests. They're here from Cincinnati. They've come up here to be part of our Sabbath retreat that's going to be starting on Monday. And since they're here and they're such awesome experts, they decided to share the amazing things with us. And so I'm very grateful. And we're starting a little bit late, so I'll just say a prayer and then just jump right into it. Amen. Let's pray. God in heaven, Father, thank you for being an amazing God. And you've given us just an abundance of resources and life and people and plants and things that thrive and grow. And God, we want to thrive and grow along with the rest of your creation. And we pray that your spirit works in a powerful way today, that you're able to use these amazing men and women to speak to our hearts and our minds so that we can find the peace that transcends understanding and the joy that we can lead with on a daily basis. So thank you for these amazing people. Use them, speak through them, and we can have a great time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Right. Good morning. It's still morning. Okay. My laptop clock says 2 p.m. So I'm standing up here. But my name is Kara. So when you met me last night, I'm a licensed master social worker. I currently work in hospice as a bereavement coordinator. All right, so we're going to bereavement coordinator in hospice. So this is my bread and butter is grief. Most of the folks on our service do not hear from me or see me until after their loved one is what they call the most death lady. So my goal with this is I'll be pulling a lot from a program I run in my job, from the grief recovery programs, and the information from that. But a lot of the information I'll be pulling also comes from my working experience with grievers as well, both as a bereavement counselor and in that support group. So my first more hypothetical question is, who do we think is grieving right in these two paintings? The first is called Person's Lead Up the Grave by Otto Hesselbrom. I kind of love it because I feel like you can imagine the scene really well. You can hear possibly the carols in the background and feel the cold and kind of see that scene really well. And the second is Jazz Funeral by Valerie Vescovi, which is a painting of a very common practice in New Orleans where funeral processions are led by jazz bands. There's a lot of celebrating, a lot of cheering, singing along, partying that goes along with it. It's a very almost joyous celebration of life in a sense. So we can look at these two and try to figure out who is quote unquote grieving right, who's actually doing it the right way. And the answer is both. Both of these scenarios are the way we grieve. Grief is a universal experience. It is the one major common denominator out of every single person in this room is that we have all grieved or are grieving something. Some would even argue that we grieve from the moment we're born and we're ripped from a familiar environment into an unfamiliar world. So grief is a very common denominator under all of us, and even though it's universal, we express it in different ways based on our needs. So for both these scenarios, both are grieving right. So grief is a broken system in the United States. And when we think of a broken system, we can think of different socio-political issues that are going on or economic issues that are going on. And that's usually what we think of when we think of the term broken system. But we don't really think of grief that way. In grief, in a sense, this idea of it being a broken system extends not only from the United States, but into the Western world as well. The farther east you go, the more the way people handle grief completely changes. Even up until the 1960s in the US, many would wear some form of black on their body, either an armband or black clothing, and that was a signal to the community that this person was actively grieving. This kind of determined how we would treat them, whether it would be approaching them and speaking to them about their grief or giving them some more space or taking care of them in some way. And unfortunately, this practice has been phased out more and more as the idea of death and dying in the US and grief itself has become more taboo. So it really has become something that we are not equipped to handle. I don't believe that grief is something that can be cured in a sense or something that we're meant to get over. But we really are, in a sense, being robbed of many opportunities to learn about it and be able to process it in a healthy way. So the two main definitions of grief that I use in my own practice, as well as through the program I run, is that the first one is that grief is the normal and natural reaction to change or loss of any kind. And I want to highlight change because grief can be a reaction to a positive change as well as a negative one. You may be getting a promotion at work. You may be moving to a city you've always wanted to move to. You could be getting married or into a relationship. No matter what, even if those things are positive, there's still change involved and there's still an adjustment involved. And where there's adjustment and change involved, grief follows shortly after. Second definition is grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. So our routines, our day-to-day, the things that we have gotten used to, those are changing. And that is the area of grief that I think is the most under-recognized. We typically pinpoint our grief on the physical loss, either the relationship or the person or the job. We don't usually look at, well, how does my day-to-day and my familiar patterns change and how I'm responding to that. So I think those definitions really encompass kind of what the grieving experience can look like. So some of the things that we grieve are tangible losses. These are physical losses, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend, a coworker, relative, neighbor. These physical losses where the person is no longer with us physically. These can also include divorces or breakups, estrangements in relationships with friends and loved ones. Even if somebody is still alive, the relationship can still end on a physical level. Pets are a big one. I think we underestimate the power of pet loss in a lot of ways. When we have pets with us for 10, 15, 20 years, that's a long period of time. They're very important to us. Job loss, moving, even if it's a better move, a loss of trust, so infidelity, betrayal, being betrayed in some way is something that we grieve. Financial loss, grieving how we were financially before, grieving the security or familiarity we had in our financial situation, and then even positive life changes, like promotions, being able to move somewhere that you always wanted to, things like that. There's no adjustment involved. So we're often confronted with myths in the way we grieve. When as a society, we try to learn how to make sense of our grief, and we try to learn how to make sense of things that we don't understand. And just as we often come up with myths in the way that we try to understand different subjects that have no explanation or are not easy to control, we often come up with myths in regards to how we grieve as well. So there's 6 myths I want to kind of focus on in the way that we grieve, that we either perpetuate towards ourselves or perpetuate towards each other in the way that we handle the grief of those around us. So the first 3 are the ideas of don't feel bad. They wouldn't want you to cry. I have my earliest memory involving this idea was I was about 7 or 8. I was at my grandfather's funeral. I went to the open casket viewing, and as a little kid, not only was seeing the dead body for the first time very jarring, but also my grandfather. And so I immediately broke down in tears. And my grandmother on my mom's side put her hand on her shoulder and very lovingly said to me, "He wouldn't want you to cry." And I was so confused. I had no idea what to do with that information, because really I felt guilty about the fact that I was crying. But I also felt like, isn't this a reasonable reason to be crying as well? So it just didn't, that something wasn't coming up there. But we often feel like we're trying to help each other in some way, like, oh, like your loved one might be lost, when wants you to feel sad, or when wants you to feel upset. And we think that's a compassionate act, but in reality, we're barring each other from fully processing our grieving experience. Replacing the loss, you can always have another child, or you can always get another dog, or you can get married again, or things like that. We try to, in kind of a consumerist culture, typically when something breaks, we replace it. We can often translate that kind of mindset onto the way we experience grief as well. Instead of fully letting it ride out, we want to find a way to replace that empty spot, that person or pet or thing that's left behind. Grieve alone. I can't cry in front of my friends and family. I deal with this a lot in my practice as a bereavement coordinator, because I deal with people who, when their loved one is close to death, will tell me every time I cry in front of my husband while he is on his deathbed, I feel like a failure, or I feel like I'm weak in some way. I have to do it when I'm not around. So that's something that I think is really drilled into us, even in the way that we have been taught to experience sadness or to experience larger emotions, is that these need to be experienced on a solo level and not in front of those around us. We don't want to make people uncomfortable. We don't want to appear weak. We want to be strong. We don't want to make the other person feel guilty or other party, when in reality, it just probably to be more isolated. The other 3 are that it just takes time. And the famous saying among grief is that time heals all wounds. And in a sense, there is merit to that statement. Time allows us to be able to process what's going on. But if we are just going about our lives trying to live as if nothing happens and just expecting time to take care of it, then we're kind of in for a roller coaster when it comes to our grief. It just postpones the emotions that we are not choosing to process in this scenario. The other one is that we have to be strong for others. I can't let my loved ones see I'm struggling. And this has a lot to do with the roles that we carry already within our families and our relationships. We already believe that we have to take care of those around us, that we can't ask for help, that we can't be struggling or having a hard time, then this belief can have an even higher amount of pressure on us when it comes to grieving, that we can't show that kind of weakness, or because I'm the parent, or because I'm dad or mom, or the spouse, I have to be able to carry my other loved ones through this situation. And then the last one, and I think one of the most actually kind of insidious ones, is that we have to keep busy. We need to constantly find ways to keep my mind off things. And this one, I think, has a major effect on us when it comes to tangible loss. And unfortunately, it's one that we can't always avoid, because when we experience tangible losses, there's a lot of ignorance that we typically have to run. You have to figure out the title of the car. Sometimes people have to go to probate court, or they have to get an executor, or cancel subscriptions, or cancel Social Security. And we can get really caught up in all of these different errands, to the point where we are completely shut off to our emotional experience as well. Part of my job is I call families within 48 hours of their loved ones passing to offer my condolences. And a lot of times people tell me I'm doing okay at the moment. I'm keeping busy. I have all this stuff to do. you know, I have all these errands to run, whereas if I called them probably a week later, I'd be getting a completely different story. But we find ways to keep ourselves busy, not only in the necessary things that we have to do, but there's also a lot of different activities that we use to keep ourselves busy. That have a short-term benefit in relieving the energy that we spend in grief, like scrolling our phones, watching TV, shopping, using different substances. These are all ways we kind of try to offshoot those emotions and energy related to grief, but it really just ends up coming in the end. So some incorrect statements that we hear when it comes to grief, we hear them on both an intellectual and a spiritual level. Intellectual statements mean that these are logically true statements, but emotionally completely neglectful and unhelpful in the situation. One of these could be, at least they're not suffering anymore. I hear this one a lot in hospice, because I deal with a lot of people with chronic long-term terminal illness that leaves them in a lot of pain. And usually their loved ones, when I call, say, I'm just glad they're not in pain, which is logically true, and can be very comforting in many ways. But we can also use that as a way to deny our experience of life. So them, I wish they were here. I feel guilty about the fact that I wish they were still here, even though they were in pain. It can just lead to a lot of confusion. The other one is that we get a lot of incorrect spiritual statements. And again, these are statements that if you are in a faith-based practice are spiritually true, but can cause us to feel guilty about the fact that we still wish they were here in some ways. Well, we can say, well, we know where they are, they're in heaven now, I'll get to see them someday, they got what they wanted, and those can all be spiritually true, and again, comforting in many ways, but at the same time, can really negate the fact, well, I still am trying to make meaning in my life without them here, and it's very hard for me. So how do we process our grief? How do we learn how to process it? How do we learn how to build a relationship with it? Because again, it's not a matter of getting over it or getting even through it or curing it or recovering from it in some senses. It really is, how do I learn about it to be able to manage it? And so I wanted to focus on first, William Worden was a grief theorist, famous grief theorist, and he came up with 4 tasks of mourning. These are kind of the steps, in a sense, that people go through, or phases. Not really stages like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages, but these are kind of 4 phases that we experience when it comes to grief. And the first is that we accept the reality of the loss. So we take it in with our whole being, not just intellectually. I used to work in primary care. I was a short-term counselor in a primary care office, and one of my clients was an older woman whose husband had passed, and it had been 3 weeks since he had passed on. And for some reason, the moment that we crossed paths was the moment that it finally sunk in and completely hit her. She was completely hysterical in the waiting room and completely hysterical the whole visit, but it had really taken 3 weeks for it to even really finally sink in into her body and in her mind. So it's different for everybody. The way grief kind of is something that we take in completely. The second is processing the grief. Grief is a physical, spiritual, and emotional process. There's a lot of different symptoms that come with grief itself. Many people become more forgetful, can become more irritated. There's a lot more exhaustion in grief. Your limbs can feel heavier, you become more clumsy. There's just a lot that's going on that we can become very confused by or even beat ourselves up over. But once we know that it's a grief, I think that allows us to have some more grace on ourselves in that scenario. It's also spiritual. You're asking a lot of questions. You're trying to figure out a lot. You may be questioning your relationship with God or higher power. If this was something that was deeply important to you, you're coming to grips with your own mortality at the same time, as well as the mortality of those around you. It's a lot to think about from a psychological and spiritual perspective as well. The third is adjusting to a world without disease. I mentioned earlier about the fact that we grieve our routines and our familiar practices as well. Let's say that you have been the caregiver of a loved one for 10 to 15 years, and when they pass, suddenly you have to learn how to adjust to a routine that doesn't involve that caregiving anymore, which is a massive adjustment to have to take on. Another area that you also have to adjust to is the fact that your values change. Our values are changing throughout our lives, but we often experience large phases of our lives where our most significant values remain the same. So that person that you were caring for that job, or that home is at the top of your list of your priorities. But what do you adjust to when that is no longer something that's meant to be there? What's important to you now? So many people find themselves in a place where they don't feel that they know who they are when they are experiencing grief, because much of their value system is changing at the same time that their relationship to the physical loss is changing as well. And then the fourth is finding an enduring connection with the deceased in the midst of embarking on a new life. So creating a balance between remembering the loss and creating a meaningful life. I often hear people say, I'm terrified of forgetting them. I'm terrified of forgetting their voice, the way they were, their personality, things they said to me. So it really is a challenge of finding a balance between honoring and remembering the impact that your loved one had on you, while also continuing to find meaning in your life as a moving forward. So creating a balance between the two is in that fourth task. And that fourth task really is a really long. It's not just something that you're in for a few years, you're constantly going to be figuring out different ways of finding a balance. Whether that be, there will be moments where I have a lot of people who say, you know, I used to call my dad every day, and now I have moments where I think, oh, I should call my dad and tell him about that, but I can't, and it's just weird. And so there's just moments like that where we're figuring out that new meeting, while also honoring the memory of those that we have lost or what we have lost in the past. So recovery and alleviation of grief symptoms, so more of the symptoms themselves, can be achieved through small and correct choices. It is not achieved through massive turnaround in our life. It is not, you know, some people cope by doing as much as possible, but what it really comes down to is these kind of small choices that we make. And I wanted to kind of go through about 5 different ones that we can use to sort of help in that way of really alleviating some of those symptoms. The first is recognizing long-term conditions. The second is sitting with conflicting emotions. 3 is seeking community. 4 is the idea of feeding your grief, and the 5th is self-compassion. So recognizing long-term traditions, this is one you can do even if you are not in a state where you are actively mourning and grieving someone or something. It's just a really good way to get to know yourself. Asking yourself, what are the most important losses and transitions you've experienced growing up? How did you react to them? What do you wish had been different in that situation? What have you learned now since then? If you had to repeat the situation, would you do anything differently? And then the second that I think is really, really important is, how did you learn to grieve growing up? What examples did you learn from? Everybody grieves, but there's going to be someone or something in your life that showed you how to do it, when you were a kid or when you were an adult. For me, it was my dad. My dad was very open about his grief. He had a close friend who was on hospice. And when he was leaving to drive to Columbus to see, and he went up to my room, gave me a big hug and wept, and I was in high school. And that was how I learned that, oh, it's okay to shed tears before something like this happens, or when you're experiencing grief. That's how I learned how to do it. So asking yourself, who was it or what was it that taught me how, can give us great insight on how to currently process the grief. The next is sitting with conflicting emotions. The 5 stages of grief are not linear. They were developed by Kubler-Ross. They were actually developed with cancer patients who had a terminal diagnosis, and it was the cancer patients' individual stages they went through, not the people that were mourning them. So the 5 stages of grief are valid in a lot of ways, because they are emotions we experience, but they're not linear. They're not a guidebook in a sense of what we experience. We often get ourselves up when we feel conflicting emotions. We can feel guilt of, did I do enough? Was I present enough? Did I advocate enough? But also relief of, that was extremely hard. I couldn't take care of them for much longer. So we find ourselves in these kind of paradoxes of grief and relief and guilt at the same time. And we have to learn how to sit with those and recognize that 2 things can be this true at the same time, as well as understanding that with the way that we're equipped in this world, we really have been doing the best we can with what we have in these situations. We often engage in energy-related behaviors to distract from feeling the full range of our feelings. I talked about that a little bit earlier. So I would take some time and go through, the last time I experienced a major grief event, even if it was a good transition, like a move or a new apartment or a new home. What did I do to cope with the feelings that I didn't want to have in the moment? For me, I moved into my first apartment living alone about a year ago, and I was obsessive about decorating the place. I would not stop shopping, and I had to make sure the place looked basically completely lived in over a year by the time I was a month in. And once I finished decorating was when I sat down and realized I actually had a lot of grief regarding the fact that I was not by myself. And it wasn't really my family anymore. So we have to look at those behaviors that we use as well. Seeking community, a community of others with similar experiences provides a lot of support and camaraderie and validation. It helps us realize that we are not crazy, that we are, again, doing the best we can, that we can be around other people who can relate, especially in terms of things like caregiving or dealing with aging family members. It's a very isolating experience, or even parenting can be a very isolating experience in a lot of ways. So finding that support and camaraderie is really important. Some support groups on social media. I've seen a lot of grief-related groups on Facebook, or even anticipatory kind of grief-related groups on Facebook. So in some ways, as much as I harp on social media, sometimes it can be a really great resource there. Some other programs that can be really helpful, there's something called Grief Share. Grief Share is usually found in a lot of religious institutions. Their website is really helpful. You just type in their zip code and your zip code, and you can actually locate different groups in the area that are typically available. The Grief Recovery Method is the program that I actually run within my company. It is also available online. You can do it online or in person with a grief recovery specialist, and then PAP is another one that also provides support groups. Feeding your grief is the idea of feeding your grief the way you would a cold. We're typically given a certain amount of time for bereavement. You can get bereavement leave. It's often way too short for what honestly people really need. And so asking ourselves, instead of ignoring it, what does my grief need today? Does it need me to kind of step back a little bit and not be as social? Does it need social support right now? Does it need me to feel okay with asking for help? Does it actually need chicken noodle soup and a day off because I actually have some physical symptoms? Asking ourselves what our grief needs rather than feeling ashamed of the fact that we're experiencing it can help us really process through that experience and come out with a much healthier relationship with it. We wouldn't beat ourselves up for having a cold. I mean, sometimes we do. This is America, but we wouldn't beat ourselves up for getting sick. So the same thing really applies when it comes to the way we treat our grief. Practicing self-compassion is also very important when it comes to grief. Grief is very isolating. In a lot of ways, it makes us feel like we are experiencing these emotions on our own, and can cause us to feel like we are the only person in the world who has ever felt this way. So there's three important elements of self-compassion. It's not just feeling sorry for yourself. It's not self-pity. It's totally different. The first one is self-kindness versus self-judgment. Treating yourself the way you would treat a friend rather than treating yourself the way you normally do when you make a mistake or the ways that we beat ourselves up. The second one is common humanity versus isolation. And that is recognizing the fact that everywhere around us, thousands, millions of people are experiencing something similar or even something very close to what we're experiencing. And that is not in a way to make us feel like what we're going through isn't special, but it's in a way to make us feel that we are not alone in what we're experiencing. And then the next is mindfulness versus over-identification. Mindfulness is living in the present moment. What do I need to do inch by inch, second by second, day by day, rather than over-identifying with our experience and allowing that to be, oh, this is what my future looks like, this is how I'll be for the rest of my life. Self-compassion is rooted in a radical acceptance of yourself and your situation as it is right now in the present moment. Acceptance of the situation does not mean, oh, I'm resigned to it, this is the way it's going to be, but self-acceptance in the situation is this is exactly what is going on in this exact present moment. And that gives us great base work for the change we want to achieve going forward. So mindfulness is the idea of what is the next right thing, instead of focusing on, oh man, am I going to be, there for my family in a week from now, 2 weeks from now? How am I going to feel a year from now? What is my life going to be like in 6 months? It's really just focusing on the next right thing. What is the next thing for me to do? Is that just to get out of bed, or is it to get into bed? Is it to make myself a meal, or is it to text my friend or ask someone to be there for me? What is just the next right thing that we can focus on, instead of trying to overwhelm ourselves with trying to make some sort of arrival point that we come up with for ourselves. So some ways to ask for help: when you have somebody who comes up to you and says, what can I do for you? Or if you need anything, let me know. We ask that a lot of kindness for each other, and almost as kind of a cultural norm. But my challenge is to actually take advantage of people when they ask for that. Most people, when we do say, what can I do for you? Or can I do something for you? We actually do want to help out. We actually do want to be there for each other. The problem is, when we're so overwhelmed with grief, is we don't usually know what the first thing is that we need from somebody else. When I'm going through it and somebody says, well, what can I do for you? I'm like, I can't even figure out which sock is the right sock. So these are just some practical ways of being able to ask for help. And that can be having somebody to watch your kids for a couple of hours while you do something you enjoy, or just get shopping done. That can be having somebody pick up groceries for you, the click list, or even going grocery shopping for you. That could be meals, like a meal train for somebody, or asking somebody to just bring over a meal for you. Mowing the lawn can be really helpful. Having somebody come over and spend time with you while they do your laundry for you. Going for a walk, just to be next to somebody else, getting a coffee. Asking somebody to be able to vent to them without getting any advice in return. Helping them post up errands, like calling Social Security, delegating different tasks related to post-death, or text support, or calls. So these are some practical ways that when somebody says, well, what can I do? If you need anything, let me know. You can say, well, actually, I do have something I need for you to do, and be able to really gain support with each other. Some important reminders related to grief itself is that, for one, you can grieve positive changes as well as negative ones. Positive transitions often come with conflicting emotions. Grief is a universal experience, but how you express it is unique to each individual. No loss is greater than any other, so we can sometimes compare each other. Well, it could be so much worse, or wow, this person went through so much more than me. But for you, you experienced that 100% when it happens to you. So it's just as important to you as it would be for anybody else who experienced the same thing or even something worse. So you experience on a unique level, and you experience it at 100%. So it's not worth minimizing the situation. Grief recovery does not mean forgetting a person, relationship, place, or concept that was lost, because memories are still important. And the last one, which I think is really, really important, is that if your emotions surrounding the loss are centered more on the events, say the smell of the hospital room, or the tangible events leading up to the loss itself, there may be more importantly a discussion of trauma when it comes to grief. Grief is a little bit more conceptual. You're grieving the concept of the person or the physicality of the person, but if you're very super focused on the tangible events leading right up to it, then it may be important to discuss how those memories may be more traumatic than to you. So these are just some resources. These are some books that I've had clients tell me were very helpful. Bearing the Unbearable is a very famous one. It's Okay That You're Not Okay is one that came out more recently, but has gotten amazing reviews. It's very excellent at kind of dispelling some of our cultural beliefs about grief. The Grieving Brain actually goes over the neurological changes we experience when we are dealing with grief, so it's a great resource there. And then the Grief Recovery Handbook is the book that goes along with the Grief Recovery Method. And some books for children and teens who are experiencing grief are Straight Talk About Death for Teenagers, How to Cope with Losing Someone You Love by Earl A. Goldman. And then When Children Grieve, which is actually by the authors of the Grief Recovery Handbook as well. And then When Children Grieve is a handbook for parents to help their children grieve as well. Some other brief, related resources are Briefcast, Brief Out Loud, and the Mindfulness of Grief podcast, which are all brief podcasts related to grief. And then a few websites that deal with grief itself are whatsyourgrief.com, grief.com, and the last one is a great resource for parents of teens or young kids called the Dougie Center for Grieving Children. And thank you. Yeah. Okay, but I can always get into you too. Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica. Some of you probably remember me from last night. So I'm going to be talking about is the winter blues, and how to fight against depression. A little bit about me. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a certified trauma specialist, and I've been working in the mental health field for 9 years. Some of these things I shared last night, and I'm also one who battles depression and mental illness and PTSD as well. So depression is definitely one that I've struggled with the most throughout my life. And so some of this about explaining last night, so I'll just skip ahead and just because of time's sake. So some of the topics we're gonna cover is what is depression, what causes depression, treatment for depression, and why is understanding depression so important. So what is depression? So depression is basically one of the most common mental illness out there, and it's a serious medical illness that affects how you feel, the way you think, as well as how you act. It's usually classified as major depressive disorder is one of the common depression diagnoses. And people with major depression have symptoms of depression either most of the day, nearly every day, and for episodes at least 2 or 3 weeks, and can experience recurring episodes throughout their life. So you may have like a couple of months where you experience it, and then the depression lifts and you're fine, and then you may just have like cycles where it just pops up throughout your life. And so it's good to be aware of the symptoms to know when you are having an episode. So in order to be able to be diagnosed with depression, you need at least 5 of these symptoms to persist for 2 or more weeks. So persistent feelings of sadness, it doesn't always have to be sadness, but it could be numbness, where you feel nothing, but you want to feel, like kind of empty inside, or it can be apathy, where you feel nothing and don't care that you feel nothing. And that's usually when we start to have like recurring thoughts of suicide and death, maybe catastrophic thinking of like running your car into something, or just passive thoughts of like wanting to die, not wanting to be here, or not wanting to wake up. Loss of interest in activities, and this can be as simple as brushing your teeth, showering, getting out of bed, cleaning your house, to doing things that you once enjoyed doing that brought you joy. Like you were an artist or a musician, no longer finding joy in doing those things. Trouble sleeping or oversleeping, so waking up throughout the middle of the night or sleeping for 16 hours a day, because that has happened to me during a depressive episode. Only getting out of bed to use the bathroom and eat. Having a poor appetite or weight changes, so eating too much or not eating. Times I was depressed the most, I think because I have to eat some cereal, because that's all the energy that I had to take care of myself. Feeling fatigue or decreased energy, So this can be like thinking about your day and all the things that you have to do, and then immediately getting exhausted and not wanting to get out of bed, just not having energy or motivation, to do the things that we have to do in life in order to live. Difficult thinking clearly or quickly, it's kind of like how I describe it, it feels like a cloud over your head. And you're very confused, you probably have guilt, you might have shame, feeling the worst, well, I need to do this and I have to do this, or I may not like, I'm a horrible person because I can't do this, I can't serve, maybe like a horrible disciple because you can't do the things that you once was able to do, or maybe work starts slipping on, like you feel guilty because I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm not, like feeling like you can't have integrity at your job. Irritability and frustration and pessimism, and so just feeling very like easily angered, easily annoyed, very short-tempered, having physical aches and body pain, so like your body is feeling weighed down, or very achy or heavy, and again, like recurring thoughts of death, or suicide. So you need at least 5 or more of these symptoms to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder. So other common types of depression is seasonal affective disorder, which is what we will talk about a lot today. And so seasonal affective disorder usually emerges during the winter, and it's brought on by diminished natural sunlight. Bipolar 2 disorder, which used to be called manic depressive, and this is usually where you have like elevated mood for no more than 4 days, low sleep, high energy, and then you have a crash where you can be depressed from anywhere between 2 weeks and 3 months. So this one is like more, the symptoms are more intense, and a lot of people with bipolar 2 disorder have a hard time maintaining the job because their depression episodes will get so bad that they just can't get out of bed no matter how much they try to motivate themselves. Persistent depressive disorder or dysthymia, which is meaning that you have had chronic depression, where you may have had some days where you go okay, but for the most part, you've been depressed for like a year to 2 years, without much relief from those symptoms. And it's situational depression, we usually call adjustment disorder, and it refers to depression that's triggered by a significant life-changing event. So you can have these symptoms of depression, but not have major depressive disorder. It could just be something, a big change has happened in your life, and it's affecting you. But it usually, if it's past 6 months, that's when it turns into major depression, because it's no longer that situation of you adjusting. Now it's pretty major. So those are different common types. And there's other things like postpartum depression, but these are some of the common types. So like I said, we're going to talk about the winter blues or sad. I thought they were going to be creative with that. So seasonal affective disorder. While it's normal in the winter for many of us to eat more rich food or to keep indoors or have more difficulty getting out of bed, seasonal affective disorder is a type of recurrent depression that appears during autumn or winter, but tends to go away once spring and summer arrive. Some people have seasonal affective disorder in summertime just because of the weather and it being too hot, and wanting to leave the house because of how icky it feels. So probably people in Texas. I hear a lot of people making movies. So symptoms of that is just like the major depression, but some other ones is just less energy, feeling withdrawn or non-communicative, irritability, increased appetite, poor concentration or memory, poor productivity, less creativity, feeling overwhelmed by simple tasks, less sex drives, suicidal ideation, weight gain, a need for more sleep or lack of motivation. So it's funny because me and Kara went to the zoo yesterday and I was like, what if seasonal affective disorder is just a hybrid? Like our body, like but because of the demands of society, like we can't do that, right? And so I wonder if it's just our body just like, no, this is actually supposed to be a seasonal break and you're not listening to it. As I researched before. So some of the causes of and treatments for SAD. So a reduction in the amount of sunlight, so I figure y'all have 2 months of darkness. Talk to you guys. Just your biological clock change, which influence, your mood and behavior. So they believe that even the sun is a part of your, sleep cycle, and it releases chemicals that help you wake up, and stay awake until the sun, go down, so your biological clock changes during that time, so you're not getting those hormones from the sun, which is crazy how God made that, like serotonin, that helps you wake up, serotonin and dopamine, which helps you wake up, and have a good mood throughout the day to be able to get things done. So that's like a huge part of it. You're not getting any sun, and so that means you're not getting the serotonin that you need and the dopamine that you need. So you typically have a hormone imbalance, which is causing these depressive symptoms. Less social activity or social contact during the winter time, is especially for women and children. So just like mom who's on maternity or something like that, and being by herself during the winter, that can also be a part of it. Just less things going on. You know, summer has all these activities, and even fall, but winter we're more likely to be isolated by ourselves. And especially if you're an extrovert like that, that's really hard for extroverts sometimes, just not being able to be with people as much as they want to. It get darker quicker, for you guys, it get dark all the time or longer. So having less physical activity is also producing like the hormones of serotonin and dopamine, so you're not doing as much and not being as active as you normally would in other seasons. Changes in diet, with even more carbs, pasta, bread, cookies, all the foods that bring us comfort and give us that feeling of like rest. Which again, is really like hibernating. So that is a big part of it too. Like I talked about yesterday, epigenetics, having depression in your family, maybe having that marker where your grandmother had depression, your mom had depression, so you have a predisposition for depression. And then a history of other disorders like PTSD or substance use or anxiety. So people with seasonal affective disorder and they already have a mental illness, it can intensify the symptoms and the probability of you having SAD during the winter. Vitamin D deficiency, kind of go with the hormone imbalance. We get vitamin D naturally from the sun. And so when the sun is not out, or we're not out in the sun, it can create a deficiency in our vitamin D, which is responsible for our mood and our sleep and our motivation. And so simply just taking more vitamin D during the winter, talking to your physician, as not a doctor, but talking to your physician about the dosage, can significantly improve your mood and give you the hormones that you need. And then also going with the your body, the hormones that give you, like in the winter, because it's darker sooner or longer, it gives you a melatonin boost. So your body is releasing more melatonin to help you sleep and rest. But again, because of the demands of society, you can't always do that. So you're tired of doing that. So that was a huge environment, just even putting this together, which I didn't know how to do. So you saw this one yesterday, but I think it's so important with depression because these, again, are the hormones that we need that makes us happy. So we need dopamine to feel motivated, to learn, to feel pleasure. We need oxytocin for our relationships and to feel connected and maintain relationships. We need serotonin to feel significant and important and connected to people. And we need endorphins that help us to pain or to alleviate the body aches and stuff and stress that we experience from anxiety and depression. And so when we have, again, that a lot of these that we get from the sun, we have that deficiency that affects us when we see things like when we have a deficiency in these hormones of procrastination, low self-esteem, mood swings, a lot of these things is repetitive, impulsivity. OCD, just wanting to feel in control, insomnia, some people can't sleep at all, or feeling disconnected in your relationships, again, one of the depression, symptoms. And at the bottom are some natural ways to increase your level of happiness, meditation, having a to-do list, exercise, and doing something creative, physical touch, listening to music, sunlight, laughing and crying, eating spicy food is so good for vacation. Sometimes I'm like, first day I have spicy food, because it releases those endorphins and your body needs to feel good. Honestly, endorphins is the main reason why we see people with a lot of tattoos, and people go get tattoos when they're sad, because the stuff will go away so long. And there's a big reason why people self that they want to take their emotional pain that they're feeling and transfer it into something physical that they can control. So here are some important coping skills that I would suggest to help during the winter blues. So community, actually this is how me and Kara became friends. We were placed in the same D group, or basically like check-in group. And so every week, every Wednesday, we just call each other and we wouldn't give advice. It was me, her, and two other girls, and we would just talk about mental health, we'll talk about medication, we'll just share how we're doing, emotionally, talking about our day. And then after we would share all these things, we would just pray. Each one of us would go and pray. And it was so helpful, for me getting better. It was a very staple thing in my mental health that helped me overcome just grief, because I had moved to Cincinnati after losing like 8 close relatives back to back over the course of 40 years. So I had a lot of healing to do. So I would suggest getting a community. There's this book that I'll show later, it's called The Winter Blues, a book. So it's important, like getting a group together where y'all meeting, whether in person or whether over the phone, but where someone just checking in with you every week for the 2 months that start here, just meeting up together to talk about what you're going through, how you're feeling, how you're processing it, how's your medication if you need to take, how's your rest, how are you taking care of yourself, just someone that you're processing your week with. And it's better to do it in a group, because it's just, you're carrying that load together, and it's not just on one other person, but you're building a community where you're supporting it. So it's good to put the group together starting in the autumn, just so that you can be prepared and ready for the winter, and just be prepared that you don't know how your body's going to respond. And so again, vitamins, talking to your physicians about getting your vitamin D evaluated to see if you are deficient, and then taking your recommended dosage that your doctor prescribed. Journaling, having a gratitude journal, because it can just be really easy, pessimistic, and very hard on ourselves because we're not able to do everything like we did in the summer. And so we can compare ourselves to like our well self when we're well, and all the things that we can do when we're well. So then when we can't do those things, we become very like, at least I'm gonna say I can become very beat up myself and down on myself. And so sometimes just writing out the things that we did right. Take a shower, brush your teeth, I went to work. If that's all you can do, that's all you can do. Making a to-do list. And I tell people who are depressed, try not to make a to-do list of more than 2 to 3 things, because if you make a list of 10 things and you don't accomplish it, it's only going to make you feel more defeated, more down on yourself, and more like a failure. But if you like my to-do list, take a shower today, brush your teeth, comb your hair, and just those 3 things can be like the hazard of the day, because like I said, some people with depression will go weeks without showering, or brushing their teeth, or even eating a healthy meal. And so just even being able to do that and feel very rewarding and releasing that dopamine in your brain, like, okay, I did something right today. So those are some helpful ways to kind of overcome that. Medication, and so if your depression is affecting your ability to function, like go to work, take care of yourself, have healthy relationships, You may want to talk to a doctor and see if medication will help, and we'll talk about a little bit more about medication. And then I wanted to share with you this really quickly about life therapy. So this is a device that you can use in some natural salt, so it's really bright. And so you can use this for at least 30 minutes a day. It's a way to get the same effect of the sun. So your eyes, but as you can see, it's really bright. And so you can set it on a timer for 10 minutes, 20 or 30. They recommend doing this 30 minutes a day. They also have light bulbs that do the same effect, so you can even buy them for the winter time and put them around your house. So that is a natural way that you can get the same effect of the sun. So I have this at work. I'm in the office all day, so just doing this sometimes when I'm doing paperwork on my break, it's just really helpful. So I just wanted to bring an example so you can see, and I think this was like no more than $20 off of Amazon, so it's pretty affordable. Yeah, a lot of research has shown that it does help in boosting the same, giving your body like that same effect as if you were in the sun. Exercising, Jennifer Johnson, I like how she called it, enjoyable movement. So finding things that you enjoy, and your movement. I know for me, we have like area yoga, where we do yoga and hands. It's for fun, just like on a surface, and we just play, but it's so good because it makes you exhausted and tired. Stretches those muscles and usually sore afterwards. So finding something that you enjoy doing. A lot of the clients like to dance, so they would go out in their yard or in the house, and on dance music and just dance for 30 minutes. But something where you are just like being physical with your body so that you can get that same serotonin and dopamine release in your body. Coming up with a self-care routine or a rest routine for some people. Like days like the same where they can have a set morning and night routine depending on your job. So just a self-care routine where you're taking care and pampering yourself, doing a facial routine, reading, journaling, deep breathing. Mine is I come home, take a shower, maybe some lavender honey tea, sit in the dark and just rest for like 10 to 15 minutes, and my body will just come down a bit. Having a therapist, you have, SAD disorder, but also other, mental illnesses like PTSD or severe anxiety. It's good to act with hope and get other skills to be able to, process that. I also, Grant would have gave you, a paper and it has like a lot of different things on it, but it's 84 coping skills on that sheet that you can use, to cope with your depression. So there's so many choices. It tells you exactly what to do and how to do it. It's very simple things that you can do. So even choosing things from that list to do. So one of the things I have my clients do when I know they have SAD disorder, we print out a calendar for each month. So the whole winter month on our calendars, and we plan things every week so that they can have to look forward to that makes them happy. And they commit to, okay, even if I feel sad, I'm gonna do these things. So maybe that's planning time to get with someone that fills you up and give you energy, that's a great listener, that you just enjoy being with, or maybe it's painting. I'm gonna paint or do a puzzle or whatever brings you joy. Planning those things in your schedule every week so that your summer is so full with things that make you happy that you're getting that dopamine when you are just making that commitment to yourself. Even though I don't feel like it, I'm gonna do the opposite of what I feel, just called opposite action, which is a big thing for depression as well, just doing the opposite of what you feel. And usually it's kind of like when we don't want to come to church, here we go, and it's like, oh, it's great work. The sun is coming outside today, and I want to be out, but this is good. So it's just doing the opposite of what your body is telling you. So yeah, I just wanted to give you that list. And these are some common therapy for SAD, which is depression. Carrie talked about the CET one yesterday, where it talks about our thoughts impact our emotion, which impacts our behavior. So the theory is if you can change your thoughts, you can change your emotions and how you feel about things, and therefore change what you do. We have DBT therapy, which is emotional regulation. So being able to process your emotion, identify your emotions, and later today, we will do an exercise, doing that. Mindfulness, and Gary talked a lot about just being mindful of the present, the here and now, accepting the things that you cannot change, and focusing on the things that you can. We can't change what other people do, we just can't. But we can focus on controlling our emotions, our behavior, our thoughts, anything that's in our control, that's what we need to focus on. Changing the people around us or the systems, we will always feel, helpless and powerless because you don't have control over anything outside of yourself. And then there's acceptance and commitment therapy. So this one is basically acknowledging, oh, sorry, I forgot about interpersonal effectiveness. So learning coping skills about how to have healthy communication and healthy relationships. So acceptance commitment therapy, this is basically identifying what you value. So if you value family, if you value honesty, if you value joy, then you want to take action that's moving you closer to your values rather than away. So if you value family, but you're not making any time for family, or you're isolating yourself, and you're moving away from your values rather than closer to. So the more you move towards your values rather than away, then you're also allowing yourself to meet your needs and take care of the things that are important to you. So these are some common therapies if you do seek help and want to ask like, hey, can we do one of these? I heard this is really good for this. And you can just also research more to see what they're about. Okay, so because with SAD, suicidal thoughts can be a problem, I included a safety plan. It's usually used for with young people, but I like it because it's very basic and you can just check it off. You can put it on your refrigerator. The link is also on the PowerPoint, so you can print it off, and it's another page where you can like kind of process a little bit more. But these are just some things like, what do you normally struggle with in the winter time? Is it losing control, or hurting people, or attempting suicide, or whatever it may be? What are some things that trigger that for you? So identifying your trigger. What are some warning signs, things that other people may be able to notice that you're doing it before you lose control? So communicate with someone, and it's good to do this with someone, not just by yourself. So sharing your daily plan with those who are close to you, maybe your spouse, maybe your roommate, maybe your close friend, maybe your discipler, whoever you are close to, so they can be like, hi, I'm noticing your triggers. How are you? So for me, mine is isolating, not responding to text messages, looking sad. My natural default is joy. So if I'm looking like I'm happy, that's a telltale sign I'm depressed. And then interventions, things that you can do that may help you. So choosing as many as you can, and again, putting these things on your calendar, so you're making sure that you are doing it on a regular basis. And things that will make it worse, will make your depression worse, that may not be helpful in calming you down and keeping you safe. So I love the safety plan because it's so basic and you don't have to really think, and it gives you so many options. You just check out what's good for you and put it somewhere visible so that you don't, if you're having a crisis, you don't have to think about it. You just look and respond. So definitely you have, if you were using this to help someone else, checking in, like how you use your safety plan today, how's that going, just to make sure that people are staying safe. So medication, I talked about this the other day, just kind of with the hormones that we just looked at. So if your body is producing too much of a chemical or too little of a chemical, that's what creates mental illness. So mental illness is just a chemical imbalance. And like I talked about last night, chemical imbalance can be created from things outside of you, so your environment, situations that happen to you, trauma, your family, traditions and their values, and then internally, the genetic markers that is left, on your DNA from your parents who may have had trauma or mental illness in their life. So I included some of the common medications for each, so for some of the common like depression and bipolar, common mental illness. And so if you want, you can research these, you can talk about it to your doctor, just knowing you're researching, you already see which side effects. But it's usually common side effects that you can look at and see. There's also, this, if you do decide to get medication, there's a thing called gene side testing, which basically they do a test to see how your body metabolize medication, to see which medications will interact better with your body. So you'll have like a green list of these other medications that will work better with your body. You have like a yellow list that will probably work well, may have some more side effects, and then like the red list, like don't try. So you can talk to your doctor about doing this gene side testing before you even get prescribed medication, so that you can have a better chance of getting prescribed the best medication for your chemical needs. So having depression doesn't mean you are weak. I know that's something that I can tell myself. It doesn't mean you are a failure or worth less than anyone else. So please don't discriminate against yourself. Kind of what Kara talked about, like having that self-compassion. And I think if you, for me, when I'm able to recognize, oh, I'm depressed, I'm not lazy, because I'm lazy, I just do anything, like actually not well, like I'm sick. So I stopped telling people like, oh, I'm just feeling depressed, because some people have just with the stigma and stuff like that. I'm just like, I'm not well. Because you're not, your body is not producing the chemicals like it's supposed to, so you are sick. And the more you tell yourself like, hey, I'm sick, like carries like a cold or a flu, and you give yourself more grace to be able to rest, you give yourself more grace to not feel like you have to be doing certain things. And so you allow your body to not have to fight against not only being sick, but the judgment that you're sick. So I love that for me. So why is understanding the depression is so important for last? So 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year, but 108,000 adults in Alaska have mental health conditions. In February, I'm just going to read some of them. In February 2021, 43.1 adults in Alaska reported symptoms of anxiety and depression. In Alaska, 28,000 adults have had a serious mental illness. 8,000 between the ages of 12 and 17 has depression. 62.9 Alaskan youth from 12 to 17 have depression, have not received any care in the last year. 1,949 people in Alaska are homeless. 1 in 8 live with a serious mental illness. So these are just some of the statistics, and other ones are, Alaska has one of the highest rate of suicide per capita in this country. The rate of suicide in the United States, is 12.57 suicides per 1,000 people in 2013. And at least one suicide occurred in 179 Alaskan communities between 2000 and 2009. So more than 90% of the people who have died by suicide have depression and any other diagnosis or treatable mental illness or substance abuse disorder. So it's really important to understand depression here, because these statistics are very like small as far as community wise, but someone in your church may be experiencing these things. And so not only being able to recognize the signs for yourself, but others is so important to making sure like we're taking care of each other. So like I said, it's also one of the statistics it's not easy as far as having access to healthcare. So these are some online therapies which I showed last night. It will be really helpful. These are a couple apps that you can download to kind of help practice that CBT therapy and the DBT therapy. This is the Winter Blues workbook that I talked about, which you can purchase from Amazon. And then this is the website of the DBT therapy where therapists explain those four skills and give you practical homework to do in order to practice social safety for therapy. And if you do it, it does work. So those are just some resources, and thank you for letting me share. If you have any questions, please write them down. I think we'll have a Q&A later, so I can come back and answer them. So thank you so much. Yes, I think Shane put them on. Yeah, he put them on the web. Yes. Mhm. Yeah, no problem. Grants.
All right, this on, hello, y'all hear me? We're good, all right. My name is Grant Geyer, as you guys all know, from Cincinnati, Ohio. Cincinnati team, let's go, come on Bearcats. I'm currently studying psychology at the University of Cincinnati. And yeah, I'm super grateful to be here. It's been super fun just exploring Alaska yesterday and stuff, and just going around, just like being in a town and like pulling out like, oh wow, there's like mountains right there. There's a bear right there. And I was like, it's super great. I think it's really cool to talk to Diane about just the differences in states and stuff, and how you guys don't have like thunderstorms up here. I'm like, wow, like I didn't know that was the thing. But it's just really cool just to be with you guys today. I'm just super grateful to share my thoughts and experiences. So today we're going to be discussing the question of, what do you think parents need to understand about the mental health of teenagers and young people? So first, I'm going to share my experience growing up in the kingdom and just my different battles with mental health, what I've learned from that, as well as just growing up. And as you guys know, though, I'm just one story, just one person. We all have different family dynamics and are all different. So I was able to conduct a small survey among friends and family of just young people, men and women, disciples and non-disciples, from like 18 to like 26, and just ask the same question of, what do you think parents need to understand about the mental health of young people and teenagers? And I was able to learn a lot from that. So I'd like to also share what I learned. Just share that with you guys and what I took away. And finally, get to go over how we can see God in all this. We can learn from the example of Jesus as well. Before, I want to preface that while I am studying psychology at UC and learning a lot, most of what I'm going to be sharing is going to be more from an anecdotal experience rather than with the research and what like studies can show. But while it might not have the most strictest methodology, I hope you guys can still be able to take something away from just the vulnerability and experience and just the perspective from young people. I'm also not here to bash on the parents about, because you're a bad parent. It's obviously just a skinny kid from Cincy, but just being able to share what my thoughts and stuff and what I've learned. It might not always apply to your problems with your children and just kind of different stuff like that. So definitely take it with a grain of salt. I think it's a very important topic, and I'm just gonna do my best. So a little bit more about me. I grew up going to a smaller church that my parents led, to a smaller school, and was popular. I was into sports, so I was able to kind of hang with people and have a lot of friends. And I got a lot of attention, at least in my head. And I was able to I got pride from that. Like, oh, this is kind of cool, kind of being the center of attention. And we ended up moving to Cincinnati, where it's a bigger school, a bigger church. And I was still really focused on myself, really focused on that, getting that attention. and all these things, and I got super prideful. And this fell into every part of my life where I pursue going after validation from people and just really focusing on just the outward part of it, not really focusing on the heart. And like this felt like my social life with my friends when I was like moving, I was trying to make friends and stuff. And I ended up getting like bullied and stuff because I was too focused on just trying to be able to like stick around with people. And I'd kind of get like the brunt of the jokes and stuff. I'm like, I'd rather be able to stick around and kind of take all this and not really have confidence in myself in that sense. And really focused on that, kind of reinforced that as like I had to be evolving and like kneeling and who I need to be and kind of be this for other people and stuff. I think wanting to improve and stuff is important, but also you have to be aware of the motivation behind it, because obviously can not be in the most healthy sense as well. As well as school, I never really applied myself because I thought that if I really applied myself and I wasn't enough, then it's like, crap, like, what do I do if am I not good enough? So I never really applied myself, and I like kind of like barely got by for a while. It's definitely kind of like an issue I had with my parents, trying to like discuss that and like what kind of was going on and stuff. As well as my relationship with God. It's super easy, like growing up, going to church, and I was able to read scriptures and memorize scriptures and be able to share what I thought God was trying to teach us in that moment. And what I thought was the most spiritual thing. It's pretty easy to put that on and like pray to God and like front of people and stuff, and be able to be like, oh, I'm so grateful for all these things. And I was just praying to people. I was just trying to come off as super spiritual, and I was just putting this pressure on myself just to be this person. And just kept going even until like up and study the Bible. I had a chance to like live with my cousin. He stayed with us in Cincinnati, and he started studying the Bible. So they'd be doing studies with him, kind of just going over stuff, and I'd be up in my room writing down these quiet times that I had with God, and just like scrambling down like, oh, Corinthians or something. And it was all fake. It was all just to come off as spiritual as I was really in this, even though I was just like, oh, my older cousin's doing this. It seems like something I should do. It seems like what all the cool people are doing, maybe I should do this as well, and kind of keep up with it. And even psychology, I think part of the mindset I had to go into psychology was to be able to like learn more about the mind and learn more about myself and others, and be able to just fortify my mind and be able to like get rid of these barriers that I can put on myself to really push myself to my limits and really want to be the best version of myself. I think that's not really a bad thing to do, because I think we should all try to strive to be the best versions, but it was all for others. It's all out of the sense of like, you got to be the best. You got to have like no blind spots. You have to be able to be well-rounded and all these things. And I started to like investigate philosophy and go after all these super profound questions about life and what is truth and what is like, why am I going after God and all these things? And I think those are good questions to ask, but I was looking for this sense of 100% certainty. And obviously you can't find 100% certainty. You need faith for things, but I was like struggling. And I think what Pierre was sharing yesterday is like, it's so hard not to be like, to like go with these things and like, I can't be 100% certain. And I was like, it's kind of stuck. And I'm like, I don't have the answer, so I'm just gonna like back off. Let me just kind of like numb myself to this, because I can't really be 100% sure that I can be like the best version. It was really overwhelming at times. And I think over time, after trying to do this all for others, it weighed on me. And I think it definitely got to me. And I for sure like gave up at points and started to really like enjoy sleeping, because I was like, this is super easy. Like time kind of flies by. It's like I was just kind of noticing like it's super hard for me to get up in the morning. It was super easy to like sleep in. Like I just love sleep. Like it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of escaping all these things. I'd go to like social media, TV shows, even books. I think I was like, when I got into books, I'm like, this is kind of cool. I'm gonna read it. But I was like just escaping into these books. Like I'd read a whole book in like a week or two without doing my homework or something. And like it's just escaping. And they were cool stories, but like I think it was the point of like, I'm just trying to escape reality and escape these things of uncertainty and all this pressure that I put on myself from others. As well as like pornography, I would kind of have an addiction to that, trying to just numb myself. And I just kind of wanted these answers. I just wanted peace. I wanted to understand why I wanted attention, but would be shy and like insecure around people. And why I'd be immature sometimes and treat others around me badly and be selfish. And why I feel like I could never really grow. And always change, not ever change, and kind of fall back into these unhealthy cycles. I say all this to say that, I guess teens and young people, we don't always know why we feel what we feel like, and sometimes we're trying our best, but just fall back down. And I'm just one example. There are also many others, as you guys know. I think in my own life, I think with my parents and wanting to be able to, I think my parents did a good job of really kind of having reinforcement of just like you're like good enough and stuff, but I think it was really hard to really process that. Like, I think I definitely put this pressure on myself to really always be the best and to really want to keep changing and evolving. And yeah, I think I just wanted to be able to have somebody that would be able to just really sit with me in those moments and just like not want to always fix it, to be like, yeah, you're enough, man. That reinforcement, just like, it's good. It's like you're enough. But I also have responses from the survey. I originally wanted to like summarize them. I think it'd be cool for you guys to kind of hear them like straight as they said. I kind of shorten some, so I don't want to like read off for like 20 minutes or something. But yeah, it's kind of cool, just kind of the same question. These are just from different people in Cincinnati. I think we can apply to most young people and stuff, but just what do we want parents to be able to understand about the mental health of young people? So here's I'm gonna start off. Okay, so it says, teenagers today want to talk about mental health much more. To bridge the gap, it helps when parents can talk about their own mental health. Children dealing with mental health struggles don't need to be fixed. Listen and learn to what they're dealing with. Some days might be challenging for kids, more challenging for kids than others. Ask what your kid needs and that day and give them space if they don't want to talk. For most young people and teenagers, struggling to have good mental health is just as scary as for them as it is for their parents. We don't always know why we think or feel the way that we do, and it can be overwhelming and discouraging when a parent is constantly questioning why you're feeling down or anxious, and etc. Sometimes it's just best to let them express themselves without a parent interjecting or trying to fix it all. Like, of course, the teen wants to be better and has most likely tried, and it hasn't changed. Encouraging them that you are a non-judgmental person, I think, and confide in is super important. However, I understand that it's a parent's job to look out for their kid, and as disciples, we should point each other back to Christ. Letting the teen not spiral is not good either, or healthy for them. Acknowledging their feelings and thoughts first, and then encouraging them with a word or offering to pray with them is super important too. Because sometimes they won't feel up for praying for themselves. And it's helpful to have know that someone else is praying for them. And one thing more to add is, what helped me most is when my parents offered ideas or things to do in a loving way. Tell me that I can't keep thinking in a certain way because it won't help. And just being able to help decipher God's truth from Satan's lies, and constantly reminding your kid that no matter what, you love them, and for them to know that they are still loved, it's the most important thing. Here's another one. I think parents need to understand that typically we are in a developmental phase, and obviously everyone varies, and that growth takes time. I think that they didn't know that their kids are going to try to be adults at one point or another, so being able to respect their boundaries, but also understanding that they aren't adults. So they need grace and guidance, and just recognizing that the parents should understand that their child is a byproduct and result of themselves. Here's a sister shared this one. I would say that sometimes emotions and situations feel so big and end of the world like. It might not be perceived that way by the adults, but to the teens going through it, it does. I think parents should allow a safe space for their children to run to them when things happen. I know for me personally, my parents were both very judgmental, They didn't believe in depression, and I often saw them criticizing other people's kids who were acting out. Therefore, I never really felt safe to tell my parents things that I was going through. I felt like I was being punished. I was going to be punished. I did try to confess things to them little by little, but I saw the reaction and often retreated. Sometimes we lack the vision for the future, we lose hope, and that combined with not having a safe space and talking to somebody can be dangerous. Parents should try to create safe environments for you to be able to be vulnerable, and then maybe we won't resort to having unsafe behaviors. And then maybe we won't resort to having unsafe behaviors when we're able to express themselves more efficiently. Here's one more. Here's another one. I think at the center of your question holds such a significant relationship between a child and a parent. There's so much power and influence there. It can also be a very vulnerable and delicate thing, both relationally, but also understanding of this how the child is still developing. I think there is an endless things everyone needs to strive to be better at and understand about each other. Well, for one, it's super beneficial, one to be aware about the current nuances of young mental health and what contributes to its decline. What I think is most important is to be able to identify the unique set of challenges that can affect kids differently and balance both protecting a child in this, but also honoring their growth. It is so helpful for a parent to come in with the awareness and humility of the likelihood that what their particular child may be experiencing can root genetically, but also be developed through a parent's influence, discipline, and example. It's important to appreciate and acknowledge these shared experiences, but also honor unique and individual experiences and acknowledge absences and upbringing that could also contribute. As a parent, it is crucial to be open-minded, ready to learn and listen, but also extend grace, encouragement, and support. And to this point, I'm not trying to dismiss the immovable role of a parent's authority. It's important to have principles in parenting, but it also can be so instrumental as to a parent to equip young people with the tools to sustain and protect their health. And especially in regard to your question, pointing more towards teenage audience. This particularly brings reward for a parent to approach their teen without the fix-it mentality, but to pursue a deeper understanding of the child's experience, challenges, and functioning core values. As you guys can see, obviously different examples and responses. There's not one simple answer. I don't have this paragraph that's like, okay, boom, parenting. Obviously, you guys know that. And I can see it's probably pretty hard, as you guys mostly know. So yeah, it's not that simple. But I think I just kind of wanted to end it off with scriptures, kind of going back to Jesus and kind of just seeing that underlying message of just love, patience, and just unconditional love. So you guys can turn to Matthew 26, verse 36. And just some context for the scripture. This is Jesus with the disciples, right before he's going to go to the cross. So he's going out to pray. So then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he became to be sorrowful and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." This is not a rhetorical question, but why do you guys think he said that last verse? But just stay here and keep watch with me. Like, what do you think the point of that is? Yeah, it's not rhetorical. Sure.
I think just emotional support, just to be there, just in case you need them.
Yeah, the way I see it is kind of what you guys are saying. Not with that fix-it mentality, because obviously they couldn't do anything about like the cross and what was going to happen. It's interesting to see because Jesus thinks God's like God in human form, all these things like never sinned, still needed that support, still needed someone to sit with them, even though they couldn't fix it, but someone just to sit with them, just be with them. And in that example, they couldn't do it, but I think obviously we can learn from their mistake. Be able to do that, be that for each other as well as for your children. And yeah, I think it just kind of, we can see with all this, it just kind of comes down to really seeing what God has done for us, and really just being able to be grateful for that, just doing our best to set that example for each other and really just be motivated out of that, and just do the best to reflect that for each other. But yeah, that's all I have. You guys can have me.
Oh, yeah. I'm a little biased, but I thought Grant did a great job. I felt myself getting a little emotional. It's the first time that we've ever spoken of the same thing. So just listening to him talk and being the parent that did the like, okay, I've got the paragraph. I'm going to fix your whole life right now. Not so much. But go ahead, everybody, just stand up for a second if you're able. The lessons and the PowerPoints and everything have been chock full. So just kind of stretch, expand your bodies, which sometimes help expands our minds. I'm just going to go for 20 minutes and I don't have a PowerPoint. Your minds are going to be the PowerPoint, you as you think through your lives. And then we're going to enjoy some lunch. So I'm going to pray once I'm done. So go ahead and have a seat. We're going to jump right into it. But I did want to, have us to think about, again, I'm grateful that all of you are here, foregoing the beautiful weather, but I hope the tools that you're learning, again, a lot of these resources will be on the website that you'll be able to go back and kind of dig in deeper and have those for yourself, your own families, your friends, and be able to share those with other people. But one of the things that I'm going to focus in on is this idea of this mind, body, soul connection and how we're different parts, but one whole. And I want, it sounds like a deep question, but all of you got here today by driving. I'm assuming you probably didn't walk, but you at least walked from your vehicle into the building. And it's something that, unless you're injured, which I think somebody hurt their foot playing softball, so it's probably a little more difficult than normal, but you were able to come into the building because of this incredible reflex that happens with us unconsciously. It's called the vestibulo-ocular reflex. How many of you have heard of that before? Okay. So the vestibulo-ocular reflex. So our body has a complex system of controls to keep us balanced. We take it for granted. Your sight, hearing, and other sensory systems help to regulate your balance. And diagnosing a balance issue can be difficult because all of the different parts that are involved. And so the vestibulo-ocular reflex is one of the fastest and most active reflexes in the human body. So listen to this. This is crazy. I've looked at this many times, but it's still amazing. It uses head movements detected by the inner ear to generate compensatory eye movements that are equal, but are opposite in direction to the head motion. You follow that? So your ear picks up what your eye is doing. So when you're walking or if you're jogging, your eyes are seeing this and your ears pick that up and they do the exact opposite so that you literally don't see this. So as you're walking and you're jogging, your ears are playing a part in you staying balanced. And if you heard my lesson last night, what you'll hear this afternoon and what you'll hear in the sermon tomorrow is this idea of how much of God's plan is tuned into us listening. So I think it's really pretty wild. It's one of those little signatures of God, like, yeah, I keep you balanced with the thing in your inner ear. Because I think so much of it is about learning to listen to God and to ourselves. So this reflex we take totally for granted until we're at a church picnic or some kind of family reunion and we participate in the bat spin. How many of you have done a bat spin? Or seen one? So it's this really silly thing where people put their forehead on a bat and they circle around and their only goal is to go from here to the laptop. And these totally, 30 seconds before fully functioning adults can't, they come off the bat and it's like, and they start spinning out of control and they can't even go 10 feet in the right direction. I think what happens, because of all of the things that are spinning around us and all of the things that are spinning inside of us, that our lives begin to sort of look like a bat spin exercise. And so part of what I have learned through the years by the grace of God, through the Bible, through therapy, through grief recovery, through a lot of patient friends, through a lot of research, through a lot of trial and error, is that God blesses us with the spiritual disciplines of prayer, of study, of fasting, of silence, of retreat, to slow us down, to give us a pause, so that our worlds can stop spinning.
Yeah.
Because really what Grant shared and what all of this is about, we all have this goal, and God certainly designed us with a goal to be able to experience him, and with all of the ups and downs in this broken world, to experience and enjoy fellowship with him and other people. But this broken world and Satan's attack is really just to keep us spinning so we can never go in the direction that we want to go.
Right.
And so something I want you to just kind of pause and reflect on is right now, what areas of your life do you think look a little bit like the bat spin? This is kind of where I want to go, but I just kind of seem to keep falling out of balance, not making a lot of, could be an emotional issue, could be a physical health issue, could be spiritually something that you're wanting to kind of get to a different place, and you just kind of feel like you're spinning and falling over. So give that some thought for a second. Something that a term that's very, very common, and I think it's a great term in the mental health field as we think about the right mindset. It's really about us. Spiritual disciplines, I also think, if there's a way to kind of simplify them, it isn't like, oh, I'm going to go pray and somehow me being a really good prayer person is going to, it is really just, or fasting or Bible study, because I don't know how many of you have sat down to pray. And it's in those moments where your mind is spinning and you have a very difficult time even praying for 5 minutes. Or you're reading your scriptures and all of these other thoughts, it's work, the kid, the dog just threw up, whatever it is. It just seems like these moments where even in those moments of spiritual discipline, of trying to put ourselves before God, we still feel that spinning. How many of you have been in church, but not actually really in church? I mean, you're there, you're making the effort, but yet your world keeps spinning. I think what's so profoundly encouraging is that really the spiritual disciplines is just us setting ourselves before God. And God's like, this is going to be a process. This is going to take a while, but the fact that you're here, I'm going to help you find and maintain that balance to keep coming to me. You're going to need to keep coming to me. It's not a one-time like manna. There's a reason that God laid it out every day, because he didn't want the Israelites to gather and be like, we're good, God, see you next week. He wanted it to be. And what did the Israelites try to do sometimes with the manna? Store it, collect more than they needed. And what happened? Maggots, gross, because it's like, no, I gave you a very specific instruction because I'm trying to teach you how to come to me to get what you need. But a very common term in mental health circles is resilience. And I think it's really pretty powerful as it relates to this idea of our lives spinning and how the spiritual disciplines help us to pause and find that balance. But resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. So resiliency sounds a lot like, to me, the vestibulo-ocular reflex. Our world is doing this, and we're like, no, I'm good. I know how to adjust. Because we don't need to be resilient when we're on vacation, sitting in the hammock and eating bonbons, right? Like, I need to really bear up under the hammock. It's in normal day life, right? We bought a used car for Grant about a year ago. And despite taking it in for maintenance and stuff like that, somebody borrowed it, went up to Akron, gave it back to him. It died on the highway. And all of a sudden, a year-old used car is gone. And it was just like, no, like, I had so much other stuff going on in my life, and wouldn't it be great if we could sort of calendar all of the challenging things, like, okay, I've got this going on at work. Next week, that would be a good time for the dog to run away, and then after the dog gets back, and then my mom's gonna get sick. Life doesn't roll that way.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing is that God has designed us to be balanced, not only from a physical sense, but like in terms of a whole person sense. And so the idea that I want to plant and help us to begin to think about is he's given us these disciplines, he's given us bodies, emotions, and being able to pause and reflect. What happens to me emotionally when I take in certain kinds of media? What am I taking in visually? What happens to me when I drink caffeine too late in the afternoon or at all? What happens to me when I dwell on certain thoughts? How does that impact my emotions? I'm a closure. So my wife and I, she's so incredible at balancing me. But if you were to open her email and my email, you'd see two radically different people in response to at least to email. On any given day, she'll have like 100 that have not been opened, which just drives me batty. Because I like 20 times a day are like, nope, read, nope, catalog filed. Like, I'm a closure, everything's gonna be organized, everything's gonna be in its place. And she's able to be like, you know what, it doesn't bother me that I haven't looked at these emails, and I cannot comprehend that. And I'm a logistics guy. She's like, oh, I was gonna go over here, and then I'm like, no, don't go there today, because we'll be at church tomorrow. And on the way back from church, so it's like, and you know what the challenging thing is, that life oddly doesn't follow my logistics plans. Turning 56, and I'm just now figuring that out. And I think God intentionally is like, I'm gonna mess with your plan today.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, wait, God, I prayed about this and it seemed to make sense. And so again, the spinning, he's like, yeah, you're worshiping the plates, you're worshiping your perceived control of all this stuff, and you've never actually really been in control. And so some of that is just, again, us evaluating what's spinning in our life, how is it helpful for us to slow down, and God can use a number of different things to help us to slow down physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That's why he created the Sabbath, so that we could acknowledge my life is spinning. I'm not moving in the direction that I want to go. I need to pause. And sometimes he'll make us pause. I'll get to that in a second. But one of the things that really helped me, I shared this last night, was when I was training for a half Ironman triathlon that required me to be on a bike for about 3 hours, and then to put my bike in the car and then to run, which sucked. It was really hard. My dad had been slowly declining with dementia over the period of about 7 years. And towards the worst part of that, where his short-term memory was maybe about 30 seconds, where he would just be caught in this loop. My mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Responded really well. We got extra time, because normally that's like a very quick, like, you've got 3 months. Since we had 18 months with her, the last 4 were really hard. The last month was brutal. The triathlon kind of fell somewhere within all of that space. I'd also still not found myself professionally, trying to restart a writing career. I had a lot of stuff. And I shared yesterday, so I'm a doer. So I was not good at pausing and saying, you're spinning. It would be, let me just go get another plate, and I can then focus on that and spinning. So it was during times of intense physical activity where God taught me to be still. And so just as I would be taking a physical inventory, like, what are you feeling? I'm tired, I'm hot, I don't want to put my bike and then have to run. And then this voice would be like, what are you feeling emotionally? Like, I don't want to, like, what are you feeling emotionally? Why are you having this thought? Why do you keep thinking this? And so what came from me, and I'd like you to look at in your own time, is Psalm 46. And then we're going to look at Mark 1 in a second. But this really became a salve for me in Psalm 46, where God said, be still and know that I am God. Because all my control, all of my logistics was me really trying to be God and take chaos out of a chaotic world and a chaotic mind and a chaotic heart. Another translation says, stop your striving and acknowledge me as God. The US, our nature, even our fellowship of churches for the longest time sort of prided ourselves on striving, like get it done, how many visitors, all of those things, again, that start off from a good place, but ended up becoming just another area of our life to keep spinning. And so time and time again, God would pause and say, you need to be still, know that you're not God, and isn't that great? And know that I am.
Right.
Mark chapter 1, let's look there, and how much time do I have? I'm only gonna go for 20 minutes. Where am I at? I have 5 minutes. Awesome. All right, look at Mark 1 with me. Again, lunch is coming. You can take in a little bit more. We doing okay?
Yeah.
All right, Mark chapter 1. I love this so much because as Grant shared and showed us from Matthew 26, where Jesus himself was like, I really just need you. He was fully human, experienced all emotions. Hebrews talks about how he was tempted in every way.
Right.
And so I love the scripture here. Mark chapter 1, we're going to start in verse 29. It says, as soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Pause just for a quick second. I try to picture what that must have been like, where you're in this town and everybody is bringing the demon possessed and the sick. What environment, what kind of atmosphere must have that been like? You think about one person possessed by a demon, you imagine multiple people. And I don't know about you, you just turn on the news and look at all of the stuff that's happening at any given day, and you're like, craziness, brokenness, sadness. And so sick people, and Jesus is healing a specific woman. I think it's great. It shares how it healed Peter's mother-in-law, but all of these needs, all of this energy, Jesus is being Jesus and healing. And we see that Jesus knows what he needed. And look in verse 35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Jesus understood, if I stay in this atmosphere, this very good thing of healing all these people could come into the only thing. And so he himself, in his perfection, participated in a spiritual discipline of pulling himself away while it was still dark, going off to a solitary place where he's like, God, Father, I just need to connect with you. And I believe that spiritual discipline allowed him to respond to a spinning world and not start spinning himself. Because again, this was a choice. If he was tempted to be religious, like we can be religious, which is get really active and do a bunch of stuff, but not get connected to God, then this was a real decision for him. And you see that in verse 36, Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, oh, it's great, Jesus. Keep going. Take your time. You're fine. Is that what they said?
No.
What did they do? Everyone is looking for you. So his spiritual support team was like, let's get back to the spinning. Come on, you've got all of these needs. What are you doing out here by yourself? The book that we're reading, Invitation to Retreat. I read a book called An Invitation to Silence and Solitude. The author talks a lot about how you can feel guilty for unplugging. It seems unproductive. Like I'm just sitting here in silence. I'm not even going to pray. It's really, really hard. But I've got enough going on up here. Don't actually need to keep perpetuating it. So practicing this idea of unplugging and let me just stop thinking and let me just listen. That takes intentionality. And so I think we have a wonderful, wonderful example in Jesus. And lastly, but we won't turn there, but probably one of the most famous Psalms, like Psalm 46, Psalm 23, has become what I begin to meditate on when I wake up at 4 a.m. and start thinking about a work project that's not going great. Or shoot, I've got to find another car for grant. Or is this book that I want to get published? Am I ever going to find an agent? Or any kind of some stupid physical goal that I set for myself. And my mind starts spinning. And I hear, the Lord is my shepherd. And I don't have any needs. And listen to the next part. What does it say? He gives me all these things to do and sends me off to be super busy. That's what I tell myself. It says, the Lord is my shepherd. I have no needs. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Makes me. He doesn't say, I think this is a good idea. You seem a little stressed. He's like, lay down. You're a crazy, dumb sheep. You don't know what's good for you. If you keep going, you're going to run into a hole. I'm not sure how many of you have seen a video where the guy extracts the sheep from this ditch. It gets out, runs about 10 feet and goes right back down into the ditch. And the guy's like, oh man. That's why we need a shepherd. Makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul, not Netflix, not working out, not church. Church can play a part in it, but it's the shepherd that restores our souls. So today, I'm gonna, in the last part, when we wrap up this afternoon, I'm gonna have a lot of questions for us to reflect, to sort of really pause to say, how much space do you give yourself to look at what areas of your life are spinning? Where are you unbalanced? Because if you're really not taking care of yourself in the capacity that you can, we're all dealt different hands. Physically, we go through different things, accidents, disease, again, broken world. Emotionally, some of us start way farther down the road than others because of trauma, because of life issues. We're all in different spots, but God being the individual loving person in God, he takes care of us as individuals. He can help you where you're at. And being able to ask those questions to evaluate, where am I spinning? How can he slow me down? How can I get back up and move in a direction where I can experience God? Let's go ahead and pray for our lunch and our fellowship together. God, thanks for this very full morning. Really appreciate Kara and Erica and Grant sharing a lot of great resources, great wisdom and insights about grief, all the different things that we've been looking at. We are grateful that we have refreshment outside waiting for us. But we know, God, that you really want to give us sustenance for our souls, that you want to help us learn how to listen to you, how to listen to the Spirit, scriptures, spiritual people, therapists, dietitians, any number of different resources that can help us find that place of wholeness. We know we live in a crazy, chaotic world. We know we have an enemy. We know there are wolves. We know there are storms. And we need you to make us lie down sometimes. We need those still waters. Our lives very much, we sometimes think we're doing pretty well, teetering and sort of in an unbalanced way, bouncing around in our lives. But from the outside, I know that my wife can see, ooh, I think you're spinning right now. And so we're so grateful that you haven't designed us for that, and that you can give us resources and tools. And so we pray, just as we're taking in physical sustenance, that this time and the conversations and the prayer and the guidance that you will give us, that we'll be able to find sustenance for our souls and become the whole people, the holy people that you want us to be. We love you and pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
There he is, right there.
All right, so we have lunch for you guys. So come on out into the lobby. We ask that you don't eat in here, but you can eat out in the lobby. There's picnic tables outside. And yeah, and so lunch is an hour, and then we'll come back and continue in the afternoon. So let's pray for the food. Or did you pray for the food? I did pray. Oh, let's go eat.
Take offense to the thing that she found. I said, don't be offended in seconds. Yeah, you're like, hey, getting back.
Yeah, you keep up with the plus stuff.
I just. I watch.
Yeah,
So I started memorizing who's who and what's what.
for sure.
Yeah.
They got no really in that soccer much. So I think they're going to football and things.
Right.